All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into chapter 9. I know I said we'd be going back to 7, but you all know me well enough to know that I change my mind daily. So, we're going to talk about imaginary and complex numbers, everybody's favorite. Right, so we did this last year in Algebra 2. So we remember that I to the first power is just I squared is -1, I cubed is -I, and I to the fourth is 1. So if you want to simplify something that has a large exponent of I, you just take whatever the exponent is. So in this case, it's 30, divide it by 4. So 4 will go into 37 times. So your remainder becomes your exponent. So I to the 30th is the same as I squared, which we know is -1. Right, and if you get no remainder, then your answer is I to the fourth. So if your remainder is 1, your answer is I. If it's 2, it's -1. If it's 3, it's -I. If there's not a remainder, then your answer is I to the fourth, which is 1. All right, and remember that I is technically the square root of -1. So when you have the square root of a negative number, remember that that negative comes out and becomes an I. So the square root of -36 would be 6, because that is the square root of 36 times I. If you can't evenly take the square root, so let's say it's -7, you just pull that I out. So it's I times the square root of -7. And then remember, we can simplify our square roots. Right, so we do our lovely little factor tree. So I have 2 4s here, so we can pull a 4 outside. The I is going to come outside with it to get rid of that negative, and we're left with a 2 inside. So make sure you are simplifying any square roots you can. Right, and then we're just going to go back over our basic add, subtract, multiply, dividing complex numbers. So remember, complex numbers is a real number plus an imaginary number. So in this case, 5 plus 3i. So we're going to add those together. Right, so you just combine like terms. So 5 and 7 gives you 12. 3i and -4i gives you a -I. So your answer to this one would just be 12 minus I. Now, if you're subtracting, so remember, when you subtract, you have to change the signs of everything in the second parenthesis. So -7 plus 4i, and then combine like terms. So this time we'll get -2 plus 7i. Right, so adding, you just combine like terms as is. Subtracting, change the signs inside your second parenthesis, or like distribute that negative through. All right, now multiplying, we're going to do everybody's favorite and FOIL. Yes, I'm just using the same complex numbers for all of these. All right, so FOIL. So 5 times 7 is 35 minus 20i plus 21i minus 12i squared. So combine the two in the middle, which gives you a plus I. So remember that I squared is -1. So we're doing minus 12 times -1, which makes that a plus 12. And then combine your 35 and 12 to get 47 plus I. And remember that your number without I goes first, the number with I goes second. And finally, we are dividing. So remember, I is a square root, and we don't like square roots in the denominator. So we are going to multiply by the conjugate. So we're going to change the sign in the middle of the denominator. So make that a 7 plus 4i, and multiply by that on top and bottom. Right, then we're going to FOIL. All right, I'm not going through the whole FOIL process. Right, so again, the reason we end up with just this on the bottom, because you do 7 times 7, 49. You're going to get a plus 28i, a minus 28i. Those will cancel out, and then we get the minus 16i squared at the end. So then, just like we did before, we're going to make these I squareds into negative ones. So that's going to give us minus 12, and then 49 plus 16 on the bottom. So then that will make our final answer 23 plus 41i over 65. Right, so again, you guys are familiar with multiplying by the conjugate. You know how to FOIL. The only different step is that you have to remember to make these I squareds into negative ones, and then just simplify further. Your final answer will probably look something just like this. All right, so I know I did this fairly quickly, but all of this is review from Algebra 2. So this should be fairly straightforward for you guys. Hopefully it's a break from the long law of sine and cosine problems. Remember, if you did not finish those, you need to get those finished and have them ready to turn in on Monday. You all be safe and have a good weekend, and I'll see you Monday.